All right, we're going to review closing entries. So the purpose of a closing entry is to close out our temporary accounts to zero to get them ready to collect new revenues, expenses, and withdrawals in the next period. So if we think about this conceptually, does revenue earned in 2024 have anything to do with 2025? And the answer is no, because it doesn't carry forward. So at the end of 2024, we're going to bring our revenue, expense, and withdrawal accounts to zero. So that way, starting in 2025, we could start collecting all of these again. So we have two different types of accounts. So we have temporary accounts and permanent accounts. So temporary accounts are revenue, expense, and withdrawals. So these are the accounts that get closed out. Temporary accounts: revenue, expense, and withdrawals. These are temporary accounts. Everything else is a permanent account. So permanent accounts don't get closed out, they get carried forward. So for instance, your cash account, you don't close out your cash account. It's cumulative period over period. It gets added to and it doesn't get closed out. So one way to think about this is a permanent account is an account which is not a temporary account. In temporary accounts, only three different kinds: revenues, expenses, and withdrawals. So let's look at closing out temporary accounts. So here we have a really simple example with 4 accounts. So the first step of the closing process is we have to close out revenue accounts. So here we have our sales revenue account. So if we have a $500 credit in this account, to bring it to zero, we would have to debit sales revenue for $500. So we debited sales revenue for $500, we brought it to zero, we closed it out. So what's the other side of the entry? We're going to close it out to income summary. So we have an account called income summary. That now has a balance of $500. Step 2, we're going to close out expense accounts. So we have our rent expense account with a $100 debit. To close it out, we'll do a $100 credit. So our debit is going to be this time to income summary, and our credit's going to be to rent expense. And that's going to be for $100. So now our income summary, we have a $500 credit and a $100 debit balance in there. So now we have to do something with this income summary account, because this income summary account is a clearing account or a passing account. So this balance that we currently have in here of $400, what we're going to do is we're going to move that to capital. So if this has a $400 credit balance, to bring it to zero, we have to debit $400. So we would debit income summary for $400, brings it to zero. What's our credit? Well, we're going to close it out to capital. It's capital. So we've closed out our revenue accounts, we've closed out our expense accounts. Now we have to do something about the withdrawals account. So the withdrawals account is closed out directly to capital. So we have a $50 credit balance. Actually, withdrawals, we would have a $50 debit balance. To close out our $50 debit balance in withdrawals, we would have to credit it $50, and then the credit side is going to be to capital. So we debit capital for $50, and then we credit withdrawals for $50. So now we've closed out our revenue, expense, and withdrawals account. But wait a minute, why is there a land account here? Well, that was just to trick you guys a little bit. Is land a temporary account? Is land revenue, expense, or withdrawals? No, it's not. Land is a permanent account. So we would not do anything with land. It would just carry forward. All right, so please review and reach out if you have any questions.